We appreciate everyone's participation in our question and answer sessions. We are learning so much, and we want to thank all of you that have submitted questions for being open and expressing your thoughts, concerns, and confusion. We hope to continue this style of communication, and we are grateful for the feedback. While all questions are valued, and most are attempts to clarify previous inaccuracies, confusion, or just further expansion on a topic, some questions stand out more than others, or we see a concept or idea that needs further attention as an article or video of its own. This video will be one of those ideas that we see presented occasionally in the comment sections of our videos and personal emails. What would happen if the grid was removed? Can't we just find a switch somewhere and turn it off? Can we all focus our collective energy and our disagreement with the grid to make it disappear? Wouldn't Earth be a paradise if the grid were removed and we could go back to living in peace and harmony like we used to? The simple answer to this is no. While it is entirely possible for the grid to be removed, disappear, and be destroyed, what is failing to be understood is that if this were to happen, we and everything we know and experience here as our Earth, including us, would be gone. If we could somehow remove the grid, dismantle the fence, or destroy the barrier, our reality would no longer exist. Our Earth would be gone, along with all the humans, plants, animals, and everything that exists in this 3D reality. It is only within the grid system, this construct, this matrix, that all these things exist, including humans. There is no Earth outside of this grid because the Earth construct was created to exist within it. Let's go back to the beginning and sort this out. Earth is not our original home. Our original planet was destroyed. We have never lived on this planet without a grid in place, and we never will. All of us died on that original planet, our souls collected, and we were transplanted to this new planet, which is a small fragment of the original planet that has been terraformed into what it is now. We can never make Earth the living library again, because it never was to start with. The living library existed on the original planet. Earth was never the living library. Gaia is not Earth. Gaia is the divine feminine aspect which inhabits Earth because it is still a remnant of the original planet in which she placed an aspect of herself. It is a soul aspect that still exists within this remnant of the original planet, as we also retain our original soul aspect within us. Earth was never a paradise, and it never will be. So what is the grid? The grid is a barrier that prevents us from perceiving and experiencing the true universe. While here in these bodies, living on this planet, i.e. real life, this barrier exists within us at a consciousness level. It is a barrier that prevents us from perceiving our reality in its true expression due to beliefs, trauma, and experiences. Everyone's internal grid or barrier is individual to that person according to their own experiences. We begin to tear down or dismantle our own internal grid when we wake up and begin to realize that reality is not what we've been told or led to believe. This can happen on a micro level, such as personal religious beliefs, silencing the inner critic, and those precious individual experiences that some of us have that show us there is more to this reality and life than we previously thought, such as near-death experiences, supernatural natural experiences, synchronicities, etc. When these things happen to us, we often call this piercing the veil, and tapping into those experiences and perceptions that are not ordinarily available to us in our day-to-day lives. The inner grid is a metaphorical blindfold. If we look at the grid as just that, a veil, we might get a better understanding of what this thing really is. Just like we have our own barrier or veil within us that keeps us towing the line of conventional knowledge and way of thinking, at the macro level we also have this barrier or veil surrounding not only planet Earth, but the entire universe that we perceive. That we perceive is the key phrase to remember here. Also, just as we cannot physically see this barrier within us, we cannot see this grid or barrier that surrounds our Earth/universe. Like our internal grid, it exists in a non-physical realm. It is only perceivable in that time-space construct we call the afterlife, when we have shed our physical limitations. Because this is its location, a switch or a method to turn it off does not exist within this physical realm. If the grid we experience in this physical life is the inner barrier of belief and consciousness, what is it at this non-physical location? It's the same. It's the barrier of beliefs and consciousness, only this is at a collective human level. It is all our agreed upon beliefs and perceptions. Just as there are holes in the inner grid of individuals who are waking up, so also there are holes in the collective grid. Every dismantling of an incorrect personal belief is a hole in the inner grid and a hole in the collective grid at the same time. We make the collective grid as it is simply an expanded extension of our internal grid. The grid at all levels is a grid of barrier of consciousness. There is not a switch to change the consciousness of every human on the planet so that we are all on the same level of agreement about everything in our reality. It doesn't work that way, and we don't get to take the easy way out. We also don't get to do the work for others who are unwilling. Everyone must do their part, and everyone must take responsibility if we are to achieve this thing as a collective, like we should have in the beginning. It's too late for that now, though. So it's every human for herself, and this is the reason why it must be this way. What about frequency? We thought the grid was some kind of frequency fence or barrier. It is a frequency fence or barrier that manipulates how much we can perceive. Therefore, it manipulates what we believe. Our consciousness operates within a band of frequency. Thoughts have frequency, right? When we expand our consciousness, we expand the limits of frequency we have access to. Expanded consciousness means expanding the limits of perceivable frequency. It's the same thing at all levels. When we push on the limits of our own consciousness and awareness, we are pushing on the limits of our prison walls, the grid. In this way, the grid becomes weaker and weaker. Allow us to use a metaphor to try to explain this concept. We talk about people waking up and becoming more aware of the truth of reality. We could, in this case, say that we are all blindfolded and placed into a room from birth. Little by little, some of us begin to realize that there is something covering our eyes. What happens if we remove it? We attempt to remove our blindfold, not by taking the entire blindfold off in one movement, but rather taking away a piece at a time to allow more light to penetrate. The darkness that we experience begins to become lighter, and we begin to perceive shapes and movements in the dark. As we work on learning, researching and expanding, our blindfold gets thinner and thinner as more and more is revealed around us. This blindfold is considered a barrier to what is really in the room. Everywhere we go in this room is seen and experienced through that blindfold. Some will experience and perceive more or less of the room, depending on how much of their own blindfold is intact. So what does this have to do with the frequency fence or barrier at the collective level? The frequency fence that surrounds this planet/universe is the walls of the room. Everyone has been placed within the confines of one room without ever knowing there is more house and indeed a whole world to explore outside of this one room. The frequency of the fence of this collective external barrier keeps humanity from perceiving anything, mostly, that exists outside of this frequency, 3D, and so humanity thinks this is all there is. There's only one room. That one room is the entirety of all that exists. Because this is all that the humans can experience in this one room, their beliefs in their collective reality are keeping them trapped in that room, frequency fence/walls of the room. Now though, some of those in the room have realized that they are wearing blindfolds, and they begin to tug and rip at their blinders until they begin to see their true state of being. One might even realize there are walls surrounding them, and so she begins to chip away at one of the walls, exposing a pinpoint of access to view what is beyond. Is it enough to break down the wall? No, but we keep going and chipping away at that pinhole until it becomes larger and larger. Soon enough, through word of mouth and observation, more and more people in the room begin to strip away their blindfolds and work on making holes in the walls and get more curious as to what exists outside. Some in the room, though, are afraid. They like things just the way they have always been. In fact, some think that these people who are tearing down the walls of the room are going against the rules. We were born with blindfolds in this room, and this is where we should stay. Who are we to challenge or think we are capable of making change or that we should? That's fine. Everyone is free to make their own choices about their own lives. Finally, enough people have taken off their blindfolds, seen the walls of the room, peered through the holes they have created and realized that they are, in fact, in some kind of containment, and a whole new and different existence lies beyond the walls of this room. Some want to go out and explore, some want to stay in the room. After all, it's a safe room and pretty nice. They just want to fix the walls, maybe add some paints and new furniture. But the room is just fine, and they like it in there. And like we said before, some are still stumbling around in the dark, wearing their blindfolds. They just want to be left alone in the corner of the room, where they are comfortable and won't trip over any new furniture or experience any of the changes these other crazy people are talking about. What's wrong with keeping things just the way they are, they might ask. What those who are tearing holes in the wall eventually discover is that soon they will need to make a choice to keep tearing down the walls or just be content to leave through one of the holes large enough to slip through. You see, if they keep tearing down the walls, eventually there won't be any more walls, and therefore no more room. The room is only made into existence by its walls. So this is also true for our frequency fence or external grid. The room represents this fence of frequency or external grid, and the blindfold is the internal grid in this story. They are complexly interwoven and in place to manipulate humanity into perceiving the reality as it is. Can you see that removing the grid, while a wonderful thought, would mean the destruction of reality as we experience it? Earth only exists within the containment of this specific frequency, and if this frequency is somewhat loosened and all would be exposed, Earth would be no more. All that we perceive, all that we see and experience here is contained within this frequency. Everything would be gone. In our blindfold story, imagine our reality as being the dark. Once the blindfold is removed, all darkness vanishes and no longer exists. Everything that we can perceive with our senses is contained within this matrix. All living beings, all nature, all heavenly bodies, all microscopic bodies, everything. When you look up into the sky, you are seeing only a copy of something that exists outside of this matrix, and not the real thing. Lucifer took 4% of the universe, which equals only what can be experienced within this limited frequency, copied it, and put it all inside this construct matrix bubble of reality, and convinced us that there is nothing but this room. And in this way, he has manipulated us and our beliefs and used this in the formation of a frequency barrier from which we are reluctant to break free. Most of humanity is still wearing blindfolds and sitting in a dark room. We aren't trapped because we believe we are trapped. We are trapped because we believe this is all there is, and so it is. For those of us individuals who are expanding our awareness, we are experiencing more and more on a personal level, yes. However, at a collective level, where this awareness would need to take place for the grid to be removed, there are still too many people who believe the illusion of this reality, and unfortunately more and more each day. If the grid was magically removed, humanity would perish, releasing all the souls trapped within the matrix. Humanity would still not be free. Most humans who are blind to their own captivity would willingly follow the AIF into a new trap, just as we did in the beginning. People will be searching for their gods, and their gods will be waiting for them. To clarify once more, to remove the grid is to disagree with this reality, and that will bring an end to not only Earth's existence, but also human existence. To live here as humans is to agree with being in a confined reality.